It's time for the next chapter where we introduce you to some wonderful books from not only here in Barbados but across the globe. Let's go right ahead and welcome Dr. Mark Echols, who is here to tell us all about his book, African Diasporan Relationships. I've read the overview and I can't wait to get between the pages because it seems quite interesting. It's looking at relationships between Black people of different cultural backgrounds. Good morning and welcome, Dr. Echols.
Good morning. Good morning, Tisha. Good morning, Barbados. I'm a huge fan of the show. I'm a huge fan of the country. I love Barbados and very happy to be here.
Well, good to have you with us. And let's delve straight into the pages. Talk to me about the book generally. I know I gave my own version of the overview, but I'm sure you'd agree I can't do it as well as you can. So go ahead and tell us all about this book, African Diasporan Relationships.
Okay, so the book is a celebration of these beautiful cultures, these beautiful couples. So what I sought to do with the book is I sought to look at African diasporan couples, couples that are coming from different countries and different cultures. So my purpose of the book was to explore what it's like to be a Black person that's dating or married to another Black person from a different country, and to both ask and answer every possible question someone may have about being in this type of relationship. So I sought to achieve that objective in a number of ways. One is I told my own personal story, being a Black American man that has been in these type of relationships for the past 25 years, dating African women, dating Caribbean women, ultimately culminating in the marriage to my beautiful Bajan wife. Then I'll look at the issue from an academic standpoint. So I discuss what the African diaspora is. I discuss what African diasporan relationships are. I discuss the prevalence of these relationships because I believe they're more common than many people believe. I talk about famous persons who are in African diasporan relationships, celebrities that come from these backgrounds, including Barbados' own Rihanna and A$AP Rocky. I talk about how to meet Black people from different cultures, if you're interested in that. I talk about what to expect in these relationships. I talk about the benefits of the relationships, the challenges of the relationships. I talk about pitfalls and things people may be apprehensive about being in this type of relationship. I address that. And finally, I interview other couples who are in these relationships. African Americans who are married to Africans, African Americans who are married to Caribbean who are married to Africans, African Americans married to Afro-Latino. I'll let them share in their own words their stories, the challenges that they've had, the benefits of being in these relationships, what they overcame, and how they ultimately were successful in the relationships. So again, I wanted to ask and answer every question that someone may possibly have about these relationships, which I find to be beautiful and in need of more discussion.
That's a lot to get through. I know that one part of a summary of the book also references the fact that these relationships are the least discussed relationship dynamics in the Black community. Qualify that for us.
Yes, because typically when you talk about relationships, particularly relationships among Black couples, you don't often hear about what it's like to be with a Black person from a different culture. So you hear maybe differences in education, maybe dating as a single parent, even interracial relationships, You hear about the struggles that maybe Black couples may experience, but you don't often hear discussions about, Black people who are in intercultural relationships. It's a unique dynamic, and one that I have not find it's discussed. And I've been researching these relationships for nearly 20 years now. So I don't see it get the focus that I believe it deserves. So that's what I want to do in this book. And I've even done the same in a Facebook group I created about this. It's the same name that's been around since 2009. I had a similar group in 2005. So I've really been involved in these discussions, doing the research for these relationships and talking about it for nearly 20 years now.
Because some of these topics or some of these areas are, as you mentioned, least discussed, were there any challenges to getting people to share their stories openly? I most certainly have found that even moving around in Barbados, people will talk to you until they see a camera, until they see a microphone, until they think I'm going to be featured in some way, and then they kind of say, I don't know about that, particularly about sharing their personal lives, which is completely opposite as you move to different cultural spheres.
That's an excellent question, and of course you are very right. It took me about 3 to 4 years to write the book, and the bulk of that time was just securing the interviews I wanted to do, because people are reluctant to share their stories, as you mentioned. So it did take me a while to secure the interviews I wanted for the book. And ultimately, what I had to do is to ensure the confidentiality of the people that were interviewed. I changed names, I changed locations to, make sure that they didn't have to worry that someone was going to identify them. I just wanted them to share their stories, for the readers and for others in these relationships to know that there are people who are successful. And the response to it, which kind of validates that approach, is a lot of people who are in these relationships, who are interested in these relationships, have read the book, and they have reported back to me that, number one, they've never read a book like this before, but also it pretty much validated their relationship. They felt special, and they felt that they belonged to something greater after, reading the book and what's in it. And not only my story, but reading what other people had to say about being in this type of relationship.
This certainly sounds like a grand research initiative. And usually when we set out to do research, there are some findings that we expect and other findings that sometimes surprise us. So were there any surprises for you along the line?
There weren't a whole lot of surprises, just because I've been doing the research for so long. But one thing I can say and share, and this is also kind of emphasizes my point about this being the least discussed relationship dynamic, particularly among Black people. It's very difficult to find information about Black people who are dating and married to other Black people from different cultures. A lot of the searches I've done, I see results for other type of relationships. Like, for instance, if I look for African American married to Caribbean, which is my own relationship, or African American married to African, I will see results for like interracial relationships, or results for other people married to African or Caribbean. So it's very difficult to get that specific dynamic, but also justify the reason for my doing this work and writing the book.
I can totally agree with you. And I know when you get married, people probably won't like to hear this, but you get married to the entire family, particularly if your partner is close to their family. And we as Caribbean people tend to be very much in each other's business. Whereas in North America and in other parts of the world, it's almost like, okay, you're grown, go off now on your own. So I know things like that really present challenges in relationships. So, what can we expect between the pages in terms of how it guides the thought processes on people who might be looking toward relationships with the fact that how people date is now, squarely a major thing. So I think that too might lend to shaping who you meet, because people aren't necessarily meeting the way they did before. Certainly people are able now to go online and meet people from all across the globe. So that might present a totally different dynamic in terms of who we're able to reach out to initially and date. And I know in the book you also cover some of that in terms of people who might be scammed along the way, because we see a lot of that as well.
I absolutely do. I address, ironic that you mentioned pretty much everything that you just discussed. So I talk about, again, how to meet people, what to expect in these relationships. So one thing you just mentioned about Caribbean families, I actually see that as a benefit of these relationships. But I give practical advice. And one of the many advice I give is to learn as much as you can about your partner, communicate. So a lot of these cultural differences you should be discussing. And one of the keys to know whether or not someone is for you is that they show interest in your country and your culture. That's one thing I could say with myself and my wife. I've been to Barbados. I love Bajan culture, Bajan food, Bajan programs. Again, I regularly follow this show. I think that's a natural aspect of being in this type of relationship, that you will show interest in your partner's culture. She still has family on the island, so we have been there. My mother-in-law is still there, Mrs. May Harvey, so hello to her. So, we go there. And in terms of the things to be concerned of and to watch out for, I actually devoted a chapter in my book, the fourth chapter, which I call the elephant in the room, because there is concern about most people when you discuss these relationships about whether or not you're going to be scammed. That's a particular fear I know from the Black American side. That may be the side from the Caribbean African as well, but also know a particular concern speaking with people from the Caribbean and African side that they may not, some are from America, for instance, Black American may not adapt to the culture. But in terms of being concerned about being scammed, my suggestions are, again, the same. You learn as much as you can about your partner's culture. You ask them questions, you observe, and you take your time. Nothing is foolproof. My ultimate advice is, are there risks? Yes, there are. There are risks. But to me, risks are inherent in relationships because you never know if any relationship is going to work. You don't know if someone wants you for your body. You don't know if someone wants you for your money. You never know if someone's feelings towards you are genuine until you go into the relationship. It's part of the inherent risk in life and love. There is no reward without risk. So I tell people to be aware, tell people to do their research, have their discussions and watch. But in the end, you can find love. I have, and so have many other couples.
Well, Dr. Echols, I must tell you, this sounds like it will make a wonderful TV series. So who knows, we might need to have a further discussion. So thank you for coming on the next chapter. Pardon?
Thank you for having me. I said that may be in the works. You never know. It's something that both myself and my wife, we do right together. So
well, wonderful. If that is, be sure to share with us as well. It would make for interesting viewing, but your book, I'm sure, will make for interesting reading. Where can we find it?
Okay. The book is actually, it's been out for 2 years. It is available on Amazon in both paperback and ebook. I'm actually doing an update to the book. So that should be out, Lord willing, in the next week or two. That would be in also paperback, ebook, and also hardcover. So that one is going to have additional interviews and resources. So it's available on Amazon. That's where you could find it. African Diaspora Relationships, holding the book up. So check it out. Definitely would appreciate whatever support I could get.
Dr. Mark Echols, author of African Diaspora Relationships. I'm sure you're as intrigued by that book as I am, so make sure you get your copy. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you for having me.